have a few more, but I definitely want to go ahead and get started because we do have quite a bit to cover today. First of all, I'd love to just kind of welcome everybody today. Thank you so much for taking the hour to join us today. I know all of us have a ton of things going on, so I appreciate everybody's time and taking the time to actually join and learn a little bit about Employee Experience Day and kind of what we can do to help you guys. Just a little bit about the webinar and agenda today as well. So today we're going to be talking about a couple of different things from an agenda standpoint. One is our goal is to just kind of help all the attendees understand what is employee experience. I think when we think about employee experience, a lot of us, may have different ideas or concepts, but there is a lot of different components I think that we can actually touch on today. So we definitely want to make sure, we kind of get down to what is employee experience, talking a little about the journey and the destination and what to kind of expect there. We'll also spend some time with Vedant and Brent to talk a little bit about, why are organizations struggling when it comes to employee experience? What are some things that you guys can actually implement to improve some of the areas that you guys are struggling with? And then we'll definitely talk a lot about onboarding, communication, a couple other components, and just some different strategies I would say that both Vedant have implemented in some of their previous organizations that you guys can potentially leverage to help improve some areas in your guys' personal organizations as well. And then I'll definitely leave some room for Q&A. I'm going to try to leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. So feel free to add questions as we're talking through different areas. If you guys do have some questions, feel free to add those. I'll try to kind of tackle some of those as we're going through. If there are certain areas where we're talking about and you guys have questions, I'll definitely try to kind of touch those as we're going. And I can ask those from Vedant and Brent as we go through. To quickly introduce Brent, so Brent actually has over 11 years of leadership experience. He has experience both in global store operations and employee experience, which is great. Prior to his current organization at LCBC, he actually worked at Under Armour, where he actually oversaw all company communication, payroll, workforce management, and he also oversaw all of the employee and customer experience. So I think he has quite a bit of knowledge that he can actually share with a lot of us today. He also actually oversaw a lot of the technologies that were being implemented and just ensuring that those are meeting the different needs of the organizations as well. In addition to that, Brent also actually worked at Lidl. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but that's a German-based retailer, and he was there actually for a couple of years prior to LCBC. And at LCBC, Brent actually oversees all onboarding, leadership development, and overall organization development as a whole, and team engagement and performance. Some fun facts about Brent. He is quite outdoorsy. Outside of that, outside of work, I would say he loves hunting. He also loves to spend time with his wife, Becky, and he does have three beautiful daughters, Peyton, Audrey, and Alexa, that he loves to also spend time with as well. Brent,
I'm
did I
heading
miss anything you want to add?
you
I'll kind of pause there.
no, you got it all. And I'm heading to the mountains tonight, actually. So looking forward to that.
Yes, good way to end the day today.
Mhm.
A little bit about Vidaan as well. I'm really excited to have her actually as a guest speaker for all of you as well. Vidaan actually is a vice president of people and human resources. She's a consultant at Amplio today. She actually has over 18 years of experience across leadership, strategy, and overall setup across HR operations. So I think Vidaan's going to be able to add a lot of great insight when it comes to overall company culture. She's actually helped a lot of organizations when it comes to inclusivity and just basically creating an organization workplace culture of trust and productivity. So I think she's going to be able to help a lot of us. Vedant has honestly worked with every, I would say, size of organization, anything from startups to your organizations that are going IPO. So she's going to be able to have a lot of knowledge to be able to help you guys wherever or whichever phase of your guys' organization growth you're at in. Vedant will definitely, I think, be able to add some good value when it comes to employee experience and your guys' overall workplace culture. Some fun facts about Vedant. She does have five sons, which are great. She loves and enjoys watching them playing sports and motorcycling. In addition to that, she loves coaching and teaching people, and she's also a motivational speaker. And in addition to that, she also enjoys boating and spending time with her family as well. Vedant, anything I missed that you would like to add to that, to your intro?
No, I'm just really glad to be here. Thank you so much, Z.
Awesome. Perfect. Awesome. So to kind of kickstart the first component over here, I guess I'll kind of start off maybe Brent with both you and Vedant over here. So my first question to both of you, when we think about employee experience or when organizations are thinking about employee experience, in your opinion, What does employee experience mean in today's workplace? And do you see it more of a journey or a destination, and why?
Well, looking at the bios, Vidon's definitely the expert between the two of us. So typically I'll try and refer to her. I just have kind of reflected experiences that I bring to it. And so when I think about employee experience, ultimately it's a journey and it starts before even the first day. A lot of times, if you look up employee experience, it'll say, starting at their first day. And the reality is it starts even before their first day. It starts when they apply. And then it goes to whenever they exit. And I think so. It's definitely a journey. But I also think we need to reflect on the fact that each employee has a destination, and they're all thinking about when their exit is. A young employee's destination may be to learn a certain set of skills and then move to another organization, and it's kind of our responsibility to help them along that journey to wherever their destination is. Another employee might be to retirement, and so um, that's kind of my thoughts on that question.
Yeah, and Brent, I agree with you in that it is a journey. And in every organization I've worked for, I'll sit across, the room or chairs with someone, and they're like, "I want to be a director," and I'm like, "Listen, you know, there's steps to becoming a director, and you don't want to become a director too soon, because if you do, everyone will see your gaps. You don't want anyone to see your gaps, right? You want everyone to say, oh my gosh, you earned that. We are so glad that you were promoted because you earned that. You worked so hard. This is so great." You don't want them to say, oh, how did they get that job? I can't even believe that they were promoted. Like, why did that happen? And so when I'm having those conversations with people and coaching them, I'm saying, hey, slow down, enjoy the journey. The journey is the joy. Find the joy in the journey and love every piece of that you follow, so that those steps bring you to that higher level, but also so that you love what you're doing. So I think it's really important to like you said, Brent, I know they're looking for that destination, but truly enjoy the journey.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Vidon and Brian, quick question for you guys. So when you guys are talking about journey, what are some things you guys think that our audience could probably apply or think about when they're just thinking about, let's say, like a new hire's journey versus, let's say, an individual that has been in the business, let's say, for the past 10 years? What are some things that we should be thinking about or applying or implementing?
Well, I think that you have to provide growth, not just vertically, but horizontally, right? So it doesn't matter where you are in your career, whether that's an entry
Yep.
level or whether that's someone who is, trying to get into leadership or even to a chief position. Help them grow horizontally. That is where you get your depth, right? It isn't just about that next title or that next place vertically. That's a silo. And so grow horizontally so that you have a lot of experience in many functional areas. Wear a lot of hats if you get the chance.
Yeah, I completely agree. Development, especially in the younger generation right now, feeling like they're being invested in is one of the most important things for the younger generation. LinkedIn research I saw did a survey, and it said 94% of employees said they would remain at a company if it invested in them to learn new things. And so that journey, we oftentimes think investing in them is just teaching them new skills so they can do their job well, but they may want to be invested in different ways. And so training, development, all that is so, so important, especially for the younger generation.
Thank you, Vidon and Brent. My next question to the two of you are, what are some common reasons you think organizations maybe are struggling with employee experience, and what can they do to overcome some of those challenges?
Well, I think it depends on the size of the organization. So I think larger organizations, I think, often want to spend money. And I know that sounds
Yep.
kind of counterintuitive. They're like, we need to improve engagement. So we're going to budget. I know when I was at Under Armour, we were like, hey, we're going to budget $500,000 to these big employee engagement programs and software where we can, give kudos and all these different things. And so I think sometimes they almost get crippled by trying to look at it too big, which
Yep.
is why I think small organizations, really have a great opportunity. There's so many small things you can do for investment. It doesn't always have to be some massive, engagement software or something like that. And yeah, so I think that's one of the struggles is I think people try to bite off more than they need to. You start small. When I went from Under Armour that had 15,000 employees to my current place has 285. And engagement is significantly stronger here at this organization than it was at Under Armour because of us not trying to bite off more than what we can manage.
Yeah. And to add to what Brent said, I think you need to make it personal, you know,
Yep.
really delve into, don't look at it so broadly that it becomes a checklist, although the checklist is really important, right? To stay
Yep.
organized and to make sure that you're doing everything that you need to, but, um, make it personal, make it meaningful,
Yep.
understand why you're bringing them in, be very transparent about what they're coming into from that, from the very beginning, from that candidate experience level.
Yep. Yep. For sure.
And I think too, what you were just saying, Vidon, about making it personal, um, it's so hard. Sometimes we think of all employees and we look at a big employee engagement survey and we think everybody's almost the same. But you have to actually chunk out your staff. So like, okay, I've got a whole chunk of people that are onboarding right now, and that's the phase they're in, and that's the experience we need to make personal to them because they're in a major
Yep.
transition in life, going from one job to the next. And then there's probably another group that's like, they just finished their first year, they feel like they're kind of on board, they're ready to go. That's a whole nother group. And then there's another group that's maybe 10 years in or 5 years in where they feel like they know the ropes and they're in the culture and they're all of that. And there's probably another group that's like, we're working towards retirement. And so making it personal to where their needs are versus just trying to think of programs that work for everybody is so important.
Yep.
Yep.
Great.
Personalization is key. That's perfect. Kind of what you were talking about a little bit here a second ago, Brent, because onboarding is a big component, right? I think when we think about employee experience, sometimes I think what happens is as organizations, we may think, okay, it's just the engagement element. That's what we need to worry about, right? But employee experience is really encompassing everything. It's from their, even before, like you said, they start with the organization, their onboarding experience, their continuous development to the day they leave the organization. So my question to you really, Brent, is how do you ensure that new employees feel welcomed and integrated during their first week and then just continues throughout their onboarding experience and time?
Yeah. So when I came to LCBC 3 years ago, I finally was like, oh, that's what it's all about. And it was unbelievable how personalized it was in pre-boarding, meaning before my first day. And so it was so organic and natural that it wasn't until obviously I got in the role that I realized, oh, wait, they actually curated that. And it's things like I got a text message from my director. Um, I think it was 2 days before, just saying, so glad you're on the team. We can't wait for you to start. The text message said, you know, don't forget we're gonna take you out to lunch on that day. I think he even said, don't show up before 9 a.m. And he goes, I know you're gonna want to show up early, but please just wait till 9 a.m. And I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting. And I show up that day and the team's out at the door waiting for me with a cup of coffee. And I go to my desk and the monitor setup I asked for was already there with a welcome basket. And the welcome basket had favorite things of mine that I had put into a survey before. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So the whole day is amazing. Go to lunch. The whole team's there. At the end of the day, on my drive home, I get a text from my supervisor that just says again, amazing first day. We're so glad you're on the team. You're gonna make me be such a great addition. And it was all those little touch points that made the difference. And none of them really cost any money. Right. And
Yeah.
so literally on the first day, I'm already calling my wife and saying this was the best decision I ever could have made, leaving corporate America to join LCBC, join a nonprofit ministry. It's amazing. So all those onboarding touch points. I mean, there's things like we put flags out for new hires at the locations and here at the central office. So just says, welcome to the team or whatever. And it's one of those little yard flags. And, we tell them to park in front of the flag and they get two welcome baskets. They get one when they come to the central office. They get one when they're at their location. And so there's all those unique little touch points that make an onboarding feel great. Even if there isn't at that time, there was no formal onboarding process, but they did
Yep.
all of that to make me feel welcome.
Yeah. And I think it's also the first impression with the company too, Brent, to kind of what you said. So I think it sets the stage for the culture as well, right? I think a lot of times that this is the like as an organization, we're like, okay, we want to implement, we want to do all these things that we want to do, but that really first touch point, that's the experience that a user really has with you guys or an individual has with your business. So I think that onboarding piece honestly is extremely critical and making sure that, employees do feel welcome, they feel like they're a part of the team and everybody's excited to have them. I think that's what makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to reference this book because a lot of this stuff it's called The Power of Moments by Dan and Chip Heath, and I highly recommend reading this book. We actually read it at Under Armour and implemented a lot of the things for our staff. And then of course I come to LCBC and they're like, "Oh, by the way, there's a book you need to read that we follow," and it was The Power of Moments, which was pretty awesome. And they look at Tractor Supply and I'm sorry, John Deere and a couple other companies and things that they do to create those meaningful moments. And, I felt it when I came on. They talk about transitions being a really, really important part. And when we're at an organization for 5 years or whatever, we forget uh, how many nerves we had going from one company to the next. Did I make the right choice? Is this going to work out? Am I going to like my boss? There's all these nerves and those major transition, life-changing moments. I think they identified like getting married, having kids, and changing jobs as like the top three biggest transitions. And so why would we not want to make every effort to have our new hires feel like this is a great place to be?
Yeah. Perfect. But Don, is there anything you'd like to add to that as
Yeah, I
well?
think that the touch points are really important, and there's something that I think is important too, and that I have done, and that is even in the even in that moment where they're trying to make that decision, that you have kind of like a wild card person that has nothing to do with their department. And so when we were stuck and they weren't sure, do I leave this big company where I'm at and come over and do sales for this smaller company? I mean, what does that look like? And of course, all the sales guys are trying to get you to come over. And they had asked me to be this wild card. And so he came in and we sat down and I just started having this conversation with him. I'm only invested in him. I'm not invested in how he can sell. I'm not in the sales department, right?
Yep.
And so we had this incredible conversation and he decided to come on. And his first day, as he went around everywhere, he walked into my office and he says, "Vadon, I want you to know you're the reason I'm here." And I said, "What?" And he's like, "The conversation I had with you, I knew was real. It was transparent, that you cared. It shared with me what it felt like to be here because you were not invested in my ability to sell. You were invested in me." And I think that that's really key. Those touch points that Brent's talking about, that's it. In this world of AI, come on, we have got to keep it human. We
Yep.
have got
Mhm.
to keep it human where we can and make those meaningful moments that give them the confirmations that they need throughout that day, throughout that week, throughout the 30, 60, 90, all of that, right?
Yeah, that's so good.
Definitely. Another question, Brent, for both you and Vidon. So, what are some practical ways you guys would say leaders can make sure that they're helping employees grow just beyond their role? So, because I think we're talking about onboarding, right? So, just kind of set the stage for an employee's success. What are some things that they can do when they're thinking about these things as well?
Brent shared a lot of those, but I think make it interactional and
Yeah.
engaging. Don't make it transactional. COVID created a transactional environment for us. Everything was transactional, right? But
Yep.
even in that, we tried to find ways where we could send them things through the mail where they got a package from their employer, right? But make it interactional, engaging, include multiple people. Brent shared, his whole team was out there. Wow, right? Some people come on and the only person they met is the HR person that's onboarding them. Make sure that there's multiple people doing that onboarding so that when they're there, they know five, six, seven people the very first moment they walk in the door or after the first meeting. Another thing is have meetings set up in their calendars to meet other people within the company. Have it already there because
Yeah.
they sit down. What am I supposed to do my first day? Hey, your calendar's full. Stay on track, right? You're meeting all these people, you're having these conversations. And
Yes.
so put that on their calendar. Make sure their emails all set up and all those are on the calendar. Make sure you have lunch with your manager or your team.
Yep.
Set up that buddy system, someone they can go to other than the manager, because nobody wants to go to their manager saying, "Where's the bathroom?" Right? I mean,
Yep.
just someone that can make that connection and then do those check-in times. Brent, one thing I've never heard and I love it was the text after the day went. That's brilliant, right? That little text after, we're so glad that you came on your way home. So I think those are just some really practical things that you can do to make it, interactive. Lots of people having meetings in their calendar. They know what they're doing that first day or that first week. Get that buddy system lined up and let them know that, and have those regular check-ins and
Mm,
touch points.
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Um, and I think you just brought it up, which I think is a really great point, is that like you don't want to go to your manager to ask where the bathroom is. I think sometimes we like overthink things and like having, a buddy or whatever you want to call them, a training lead, give them a tour of the building on the first day. Hey, let's just walk around. I'm going to show you things that like you think of the things that they might. I'm going to give you a tour of this closet that we sometimes go to because it has certain things. And it's just like, you think of the little things. And then you brought up like on the point of onboarding, when I came to LCBC, there was no formal onboarding process. And so one of my first project was let's formalize this. And so everyone's like, do we need a system or what do we need? And we literally just got in a room with every one of the key department leaders and said, what do we want a new hire to know, to feel, to experience, not just what do we want them to know for their job. It was holistic. Like what do we want them to feel? And one of the things that went up on the board is we want them to feel more welcome than they ever have before in their life. And one of the finance guys was like, "Is that reasonable? Do we really want that?" And we're like, "Well, do we not want it?" I mean, yeah, it's aspirational. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of people that probably answer no to that question, but like, why not work towards that? And so we put all those things on a board and the list was really long. And we started saying, okay, well, let's narrow it in and just do it for all staff. So part time, full time, location, digital, director, or coordinator, doesn't matter. And we crossed a lot of things off the list because we're like, actually, some of that's more specialized. They'll learn when they are learning their job. And we got that list down. So we created and like all great things in business, it started in Excel. And it was literally just a list of things that we want them to be taught, to experience, to do. And then we said, when do we want them to know it by? So we broke it into phases. We want that pre-boarding before, we want that on the day. And once we had it into phases, now all of a sudden we've got an Excel sheet that we can give to the supervisor, the training lead, and we have it that just tracks along. And that was way before we had a system that made it super easy. We just had an Excel and we did that for a year. And the feedback we got was unbelievable. The consistency across the organization, where, we were used to just saying, okay, here's your expert in this department. They're going to train you, but there's always gaps when that happens. And so, making sure you put enough field questions in there, not just know this thing.
Yep. And I like what you said, Brent. I think making sure that all leaders, right, across departments that they're involved, because I think when you think about it too, they're going to be the ones also helping you root and make sure that those things are happening, right? So if you create an onboarding process, for example, where nobody really knows about, other leaders don't know what you're really doing, they're not going to really know very much. They're not going to be able to support you as much. But I think if you make sure that everybody's also a part of that initiative, whether it's like technologies that you're implementing, processes that I think you're trying to improve, I think if you bring those people in, they're going to also give you a lot of insight because each department also may be having a different problem. Like Vidon was talking about that a little bit earlier, but I think that's going to also help as well with a lot of those pieces also, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And it takes a little bit of effort because when you have those different department leaders, they
Yep.
have the things in their mind that they need
Yep.
to teach.
Yes.
So it took us a little bit of effort to say, okay, guys, remember, we're working on organizational onboarding,
Yep.
not finance or whatever. So let's think, what do they need to be great at LCBC, not great as a finance director? And when everybody had that, then all of a sudden it was amazing because they started all just thinking the same lens. And now you have, like you said, you have advocates across the whole organization who say,
Yep.
I agreed that these are the things that a new hire needs to feel welcome to the team and to know the things they need to know over the 90-day onboarding process.
Yep. Yep. For sure. That makes sense. Anything you'd like to add, Vidon, there as
Oh, I
well?
think I think we've covered it very well, and I hope a lot of people were able to get some ideas, through the conversation.
Yep. That's perfect. That's awesome. I think again, kind of tying, of course, the onboarding element and kind of some of the ongoing journey that the employees and the experience that they have with us, right? So my next question to the two of you really is, in your guys' experience, what are some effective ways to create a positive, connected, and supportive workplace culture? But I don't know if you want to lead that. You can
Yeah,
start and
I
then
do. I just think sometimes we get confused as to what culture is, right? We
yep,
can we confuse culture with environment, all right? So culture is the way we feel about our environment, right? Our environment and our culture are very different. And so the people actually build your culture. So for me, I think it's interesting, and I hope this concept comes across well, and that is that, culture it isn't a noun. It is not it's not like a benefit that comes to you, like here's our culture and you get to have it.
yep,
It's something that actually comes through you. Culture comes through you in the way you treat one another, in the way you feel, right? And that goes a little bit with inclusion, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But on that workplace culture, it is, how do I feel about the environment that I'm in, right? And so it's creating not only a great culture that we can say, oh, we have this great culture. Well, maybe not to some people. Maybe their environment doesn't give them that feeling, um, that they need to have to be included in that culture. So I think it's really important that we separate those out and understand that culture is the way we feel. And then everyone stop saying what the culture is and start living what the culture needs to be. Start treating one another the way that you want people to feel. That will create that culture. As opposed to like a statement, and then everyone goes, well, that statement doesn't fit me, right? That doesn't ever happen for me, because they're walking in waiting for it to happen to them, and they need to make it happen for the person next to them, elevating the people around them. And as you do that, then others will begin to elevate you.
Hmm. Preach, Vidon.
Preach.
That is so good. And when I heard you say that when we chatted earlier, I was like, man, there's so much to unpack there because I when I came to LCBC, I have seen healthy cultures. Under Armour, kind of at its peak, was a super healthy culture, and then we got real big and we grew fast, and things can shift a little bit. And then I came to LCBC and was like, this is what healthy culture looks like. And so when people ask me, hey, how's it like? And I tried to describe the culture, you can't describe it. When you're
Right.
at a really healthy, in a really healthy culture, it's like you're trying to describe feelings. So you try and think of things like, well, that, and we do this, and well, we have great work-life balance, and you're trying to put words on things, but like it's not that. It truly is. It's a feeling. And when you're at a great culture, and that's because it's embedded in you, and it's embedded in you through your core values. And so I think we might talk about that later, but like one of our 4 values is relationships. And so where you talked about how you were the one person during an onboarding that they talked to that wasn't talking about sales. Relationships is a core value. So the amount of people on staff that came over to me on my first day and just said, "Hey, how are you, Brent? Welcome to the team. We're excited to have you on. Would love to meet with you later." It's because relationships was a value, you know. Um, the our senior pastor was leaving probably my first week or two, and I think I was at my desk at 5:30 or something. I was just wrapping up, still onboarding, just soaking it all in. And he said, "See you later." And then, he walked 20 feet, and all of a sudden he did a back step and he said, "Hey, when are you getting out of here?" And the culture was, do your work, but don't feel like you need to stay just for the sake of staying. And I think he knew it was my first week. I don't have anything I should be doing at 5:30 on my first week. So he said, "When are you getting out of here?" And I'm like, "I'll wrap it up here soon." But that's a culture thing where he instilled that, like, it's not like we have work-life balance in a saying.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And then you've got cultures and subcultures, right? There's this culture of the company,
Mm,
and then there's the culture of the finance department, and there's the culture of of the different things of their different environments feels differently when you're with those different people. And a meeting can have its own culture and its own environment as well, right? Depending on what goes there. So Brent, I love what you're saying there, because yes, it's this beautiful canvas, this beautiful painting, and we're all trying to say, well, what does that mean? And we say, I can't tell you what it means. I can only tell you what it looks like and how it makes me feel.
yep. Yep, that's so good. And I think there might be some people on the call right now saying, like, I don't have the kind of influence to change the culture of my organization. And I know I have felt that way when I was at large organizations before. One thing that I tried to find this stat because I've used it now a lot, but I know it's real, it exists, is that they did a study of of great organizations who have very good cultures. And of course, we all know the stats that if you have a great culture, you're hundreds of percent more likely to have better revenue and better engagement and all those things. What they did though, this study actually went one step deeper and looked at organizations that had bad cultures but had very low turnover on teams, and they almost upended all of that culture stuff, and they were proposing actually that it's not an organizational culture that keeps those things moving, it's team
Team
culture.
culture,
So
right?
you
The
can be at a
subculture.
bad culture organization, but if your team is super strong, then engagement and tenure extends drastically because the
Absolutely.
team is there. So we don't always have to bite off everything and say I'm fixing the whole organization culture. We could start with our team, and we could start with our brother sister department team and say let's make our culture great. And before you know it, that starts to infect the rest of the organization.
Absolutely. 100%.
That's perfect. You kind of read my mind, Brent. I was going to ask you a little bit about that on what we can like tell the audience on what they could potentially do to kind of tackle some of that. So that's perfect. My next question actually to you, Brent, would be is what role do you think employee feedback plays when it comes to some of these changes that individuals may want to probably apply? And then what can they do also as an organization to encourage open feedback when it comes to improving their culture and maybe areas that individuals are struggling?
Mm, yeah. Uh, I think two things that come to mind with that is it's all about relationships.
Yep.
And so if somebody just puts a feedback survey in and they just put a sentence, you can't take that necessarily directly on face value. There could very likely be a comment or a question under the question. So you're going to get the best feedback over lunch with somebody. Like, hey, I saw that whatever this score came in, whatever. You're not talking about the score. You're just learning. You're getting a pulse of how the organization is feeling. And so the relationship end it's much more significant than the feedback you get from a survey. And then as far as organizations that actually really really good, Craig Rochelle just put out a podcast today on culture feedback, and it was a great. I listened to it on my drive in this morning, and the biggest thing he says is that feedback has to be modeled. So like, and that's probably not new to anybody on this call, but if your leaders aren't open to feedback, then the people below them won't be open to feedback. And so when your leaders are modeling, hey, how did that presentation go? Uh, but maybe not just saying how did it go, say, hey, did this point hit right? And when the team is seeing that the leaders are open to that feedback, then they're more willing to give it as well.
Yeah,
Madonna,
I'm going to
anything you'd
add a
like to
few
add
things
to
to
that?
that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, so the questions that Brent was just talking about, like make them open-ended. Do you feel safe in this environment? Yes or no? Like, what does that tell us? Nothing, right? So it's really having those open-ended questions where they can really share how they feel about that. And then having something like a stay interview. I've done stay interviews, like, why do you stay here? What's important for you, right? It's that one-on-one, that relationship building and getting that. And it's always, always, always trust and transparency, trust and transparency. You're asking these questions, and then if you do nothing about it, right? And no one cares, then they feel like I'm not going to give my feedback anymore because they don't do anything with my feedback and my feedback is of no value,
Mm,
right?
Yep.
And so it's really important to build that trust and that transparency, ask those open-ended questions, do some stay interviews on why they stay. Everyone does an exit interview, but that's too late, people, right? They're walking out the door. So, it's really having those conversations and really encouraging and asking them too, even about goals, the company goals, how their personal goals fit in with their company goals. Do they have their career pathing? Do they feel like that fits into the company goal? Do they feel empowered to do their job, or do they feel micromanaged to do their job?
mm,
Yep.
And so there's a lot of pieces to this. And so that's why it's so important that you get that feedback in that survey, or I mean, you can do it in words or in those relationships, that you get that feedback so that you know what the issue is. Then you can dive into that issue and you can fix those things that help create a better environment, that help them feel safe and feel valued within their culture.
mm.
That's perfect.
That's great.
Michelle actually had a great question for you guys. So I'm going to go through questions, Brent and Vidon, as we kind of go through a little bit too. So she had written, how do you spread the culture from the central office when your company has different entities throughout the US? Brent, I don't know if you want to start with that by chance.
Yeah, that's a great
Yep.
great and it's probably one of the most challenging things
Yep.
because like I said earlier, teams are what make a culture.
Yep.
And so we often use the language culture leaks. And so as you get further away from the home office, that culture can leak. But most importantly, it's making sure that you have managers, leaders, store managers, whatever they are, that are aligned to the culture. Um, Nothing hurts a culture more than toxic leaders, leaders that aren't aligned to the mission and the values. In fact, there was a stat that said 70% of engagement comes from manager behavior. So the direct manager of that store is literally deciding what that culture is going to look like. Qualtrics surveyed like 17,000 employees back in like 2020 or 2021, and they said that uh, the staff is 90, I think it was 96% more engaged if they had a supportive manager. And it was like, man, of course we all intuitively know that. Like it's the manager that's going to help lead that. And so when you think about separate locations, you have to make sure that that manager is aligned with the culture and the district manager, right? If you've got multiple layers, if you have a district manager that's not aligned, it's very likely they're going to hire store managers that also aren't aligned. And so it's so important that the leadership is aligned to the culture and the values that the organization is putting forward.
Vidon, did you want to add anything to that at all?
I just think staying in contact with them, get on a plane, go see them, go see
Yeah.
what it feels like while you're there, go get
Yep.
the real information, right? Bring them into the main office from time to time. Have those connections that happen, but you're not going to spread that unless you go spread it. It's not going to happen and you never visit there, right? So
Yep.
put that in your travel budget that those things have to happen. Another great way is roundtables. I'll talk about more about the roundtables in the communication.
Yep. That sounds great.
That that's so true. Like you said, Don, like be there, go there, be in person. Like when I was at Under Armour, I did a lot of jet trips to the different stores with folks, and you can sense like somebody could put lipstick on a pig and make a store look great and have it, the presentation looks good. You can tell when the culture they cannot fake culture. Like you
That's
can
right.
sense it from the staff. They can have the best employees on. The culture's off when you're there. And in my role here, we have 25 locations along Eastern Pennsylvania, and pretty much on Sundays, I'm out at the locations, and people say, "What are you doing?" I'm where the people are, right? And so we don't have a lot of staff that do that, but we do because we need to make sure we're where the people are, where our staff are, and where our attendees are.
Perfect. Michelle, I hope that answers your question. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to add that in the chat and then I can ask for you as well. So I think I wanted to actually spend some time also just talking a little bit, Brent and Vidon, about recognition because I think that's a big thing, right? When we think about just kind of an individual's ongoing journey with us as a business. So one of my questions to you guys is, Brent, I don't know if you or Vidon, if you'd like to start on this one, but what are some successful recognition programs that you both have implemented or seen in previous organizations that you maybe recommend for others that they can potentially implement or think about when it comes to some of those components?
Hey, do you want to start, Brent?
I'll let you kick it off,
Oh,
Adon. I feel
well,
like
I think,
I feel like you're an expert here.
oh, no,
Yes.
I'm really not. What recognition is really important, and I think that part of that importance is, making sure that we're taking care of our people and that they know that they're valued, right? That's the most important part of recognition.
Yep.
That's really hard when you have hybrid teams, when you when you have teams that are there, right?
Yep.
And making that recognition really meaningful. But we need to be transparent. We need to have we need to make sure that we need to make sure in our recognition that we're meeting their needs, right? What's important
Yes.
to them? A lot of times we say, okay, well, here's an attaboy, or here's a that's great, and we post it on a web page, but that's not as meaningful as if someone comes in and says thank you. is if someone actually, like if they're doing something for you, show appreciation, and show appreciation in a really meaningful way, right? And that's going to be different with every person. You have to know your teams, you have to know your company, you have to know your leaders, and then allow allow the leader to give the recognition to each individual person differently. Now, it, in a company that I was with, I and this is a really great example of an incredible leader. We had just, oil had hit $20 a gallon, and we knew we had to do a layoff. And these were people that had just built the company from zero, right? From zero. Everyone had been there for a couple years, and now here we were in this really difficult situation. And I was doing my best, staying late at night, making sure that when we did this layoff, that we did it with respect, that we did it with care, that we did it, really highlighting the people and what they've given this company. It would not be here without them, and yet we have to walk them out the door, right? How do we do that well? So I was staying late at night. I was making sure all the T's were crossed, I's were dotted. It was throughout the whole US. We had to fly people around so that it was one on one, and there wasn't this, here's an email, I just got laid off, right? I mean, that was the COVID thing. Hey, just got an email, just got laid off. And so we were sending people everywhere to do this. And when we got all done, I remember the end of that day, and I sent a little email to the CEO. And I'm sorry if I get emotional. We sent a little email to the CEO, and I said, I was a good soldier today. I did everything I was supposed to do. But it was really, really difficult to say goodbye to all these really great people. And several of those people hugged me on the way out. Thank you for everything. I'm like, who thanks you when you're doing a termination? But that was how I wanted that to come across, is that the company was there because of them. And I sent that email off, and the next day the CEO came down to my office and he said, Vidon, I just wanted to say thank you. I know you've spent a lot of time here. You spent a lot of personal time away from your family. He's like, I want to send you and your family for the weekend on a trip anywhere you want to go within Texas. And it's all expense paid. And he said, this isn't from the company because that wouldn't be fair. This is personally from me because of the way you handled this. And I knew that you gave that personal, and it's really personal for me that those people were taken care of. And I just wanted to say thank you. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? That
Hmm.
is one of the
Hmm.
best leaders I've ever worked for, because they knew what I had sacrificed, and then they thanked me in a way that gave me back what was most valuable to me. It wasn't like a bonus check. He could have given me a bonus check. No, I sacrificed time with my family. So what did he give me back? Time with my family.
Hmm.
Guys, know what the currency is. Everyone's currency is different. Know their currency and then recognize them, giving them rewards within that currency that's meaningful to them. And that's really my thought on recognition.
That's such a great story of Adon. And it's like I think if anybody thinks back to a personal time they were recognized, that's when you know it was most meaningful. Like for me, I went to we opened our Under Armour store in Park City, Utah, and Kevin Plank, who's the CEO of Under Armour, has a house in Park City, and they were behind in schedule. It was Thanksgiving. They were going to open on Black Friday. And the head of stores, and I don't do new store openings or anything. I had a much different role, but she said, Brent, would you be willing to fly out there and just make sure it stays on track? So on Black Friday, retail, it's ready to go. And I said, okay, so that's Thanksgiving. I'm going to miss Thanksgiving with the family and all that stuff. And I said, of course, like I won't say no to that. And right before I left, she said, don't forget to bring your skis. And I'm like, what? And she said, because you were so gracious to do this, I want to pay for you to go ski, on the Thanksgiving day when they open. We're not open the stores. I want you to go skiing for the day. And so I brought my skis and my boots and all of that. And like, but it was personal. She knew I loved to
Yeah.
ski. I flew out there over Black Friday, made sure the store got open, and I went skiing at Park City for the day. It was like you said, when it's personal is when it matters.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. One other question, Brent, for you and Vidon, maybe. So, for just kind of to help our attendees a little bit, right? Because I think when we think about recognition and some of these like type of events, right, there may be some things that are, let's say, a major event or something major that an individual has done where they may want to do something significant, like what we just talked about, right? But aside from that, what are some of your guys' recommendations? Like, how frequently should we be making sure that employees, let's say, are getting recognized? Do you guys have a recommendation at all? Like, hey, once a month, once a week, for example, how often should we be thinking about those things? Or what do you guys recommend on that for the audience?
I wouldn't do it too often. I do it when when something's happened, right? I mean,
Yep,
you give someone recognition when they do something well, when they
yep,
do something appreciative, right? Say thank you. How hard is it to say thank you?
yep.
And I had a manager that did not thank me. Like it didn't matter what I did. There was no good job. There was no thank you. It just was that big expectation. And then, well, I thought you were going to do this or that, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, come on. So I think you do it when it's deserved.
Yep.
And if you do it too much, it doesn't mean anything. So make sure that it's real and that it's personal and that it's appropriate for what they've accomplished
Yeah,
or
I
what
would
they've said.
completely agree.
Yeah.
I would completely agree. Thank yous don't take any time at all, and they don't take any money at all. And if they're done genuine, keyword is genuine, when there was a real reason, extra effort was put in,
Yep.
that goes a long way. And then you just think of other places to do it. Like we do an annual staff recognition for tenure, how long they've been in milestones, essentially, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And we always do it during the all staff meeting. And this past year, we realized that we were inviting spouses to the all staff. And we were like, it would be meaningful if we did the time and service recognition on the all staff when the spouses are there so they can see us all standing up and cheering them and recognizing their significant other. So we changed the day, put it on the day the spouses were going to be there for that recognition. And so, but if you didn't think through that, that's meaningful that their spouse will see them get recognized for the 10 years. You know, it's those little things.
Yep. Yep, for sure. That's perfect. Brenda, I know at Under Armour and then also at LCBC and some of the other organizations, right? Technology has been a big thing that you've kind of overlooked at quite a bit. So, what types of technologies do you think leaders should be considering when they're thinking of a lot of these problems, right? Whether it's like recognition, engagement, because each business may have a different problem, right? Some may communication may be their biggest problem. Some may be onboarding where they're struggling the most. And we know different aspects of it, again, impact the employee's journey differently. So, do you have any recommendations? When they're thinking of technologies, what should they be thinking about and considering?
hmm Yeah, for sure. The most important thing is that the technology solves the actual root issue, the actual root problem. If you go on, Q2 or Capterra, you go to the research companies that have done all this, and you can just search any one of the different softwares. You'll do an RFP, you'll start having calls, you'll realize that they have built out big platforms that solve a lot of problems, and you might get distracted by like, oh, that'd be a nice feature. Oh, that we could benefit from that. We could benefit from that. And before you know it, you're going with a software um, or a solution provider that isn't solving the root problem most effectively. And a lot of times we went and when I rolled out the district manager visit tool to our district managers at Under Armour, and there's lots of tools that offer that. I ended up using a mystery shop software that wasn't designed for a DM visit, but it was so much more effective for the simple problem we were trying to solve that that's what we went with. We didn't go with one of the big guys, and on top of it, it was like half the price. So, you need to find the solution that meets and solves the actual problem,
Yep.
and then on top of it, you need to find something that works for your team. Like, if you've got super tech savvy folks, then great, you can go all tech. If you've got people that are not tech savvy, then you need to be leaning into that. If you have people that don't use mobile, they only use desktops, then don't worry about the mobile features. But how about people who are just mobile? DMs are going to be on their phone all day. We don't want to have to give them iPads. And so making sure that the user experience, the interface, all of that feels like your brand and is going to work for your organization. The worst thing you can do is roll out something that doesn't feel like your brand, because then it feels like just another tool, another piece of software. And feeling like your brand is color, looks, like it's the UI, the simplicity of clicking on things, like that's all really, really important for adoption.
Yep. That's perfect. I know we have roughly 8 minutes left on the webinar. If there's questions, feel free to add those. There's a few other areas we want to cover with you guys as well. So I'll kind of keep going through, but I'll actually monitor the question chats. I'm monitoring that actively. So if there's any specific questions, just feel free to add those, and I can definitely kind of make sure we're talking through some of those as well. The other aspect, Brent and Vidon, I want to kind of touch on as well is communication is a big thing, right? If we think about how organizations are structured today, not everybody may be in person, right? So some of the experiences that we talked about, there's components where, let's say, people may have hybrid staff. I think I read a study, I think it's a little over 57. I don't remember the metric off the top of my head, where organizations have hybrid staff members, right? So when it comes to communication and making sure employees are well informed of what's happening in the business, what are some strategies or things that you guys recommend to make sure that, organizations are making sure that if there's things going on, in the business, that employees are well informed? If everybody's, let's say, not in person, they have hybrid or a lot of remote folks, what do you guys recommend on that?
I think that if you have, that communication is really key. A lot of people just say, "Oh, we'll have this at all hands meeting," and in reality, that's a big group of people, and a lot of people don't want to ask questions in all hands and things like that, right? But I think if you have hybrid people, if you're doing a meeting, don't do a meeting that has both hybrid and in person. That never works. Everyone tries it. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
They still keep doing it. I don't know why. I'm like, okay, even if you have people in the office and you have people that are online, make the whole thing virtual, because then everybody knows how to act. Everyone knows that we're all on the same page. We're all in the same place. We're all experiencing the same environment. Same with in person. If you're going to have an in-person meeting, make sure everybody's there in person, right? And if you're having difficult conversations that you need to have, split those up into smaller groups and do things like a round table where a leader will come in and there's just 10 people at that table. Instead of trying to announce this big thing to, 100 people or 1,000 people, sit down and there's 10, 12 people around that round table. Questions get to be asked, and that time gives each person the opportunity to have a voice, but it also helps them to be able to listen. And the leader then can listen to the people one on one. It's not hearsay from the HR department, right? No, you sit your butt in that chair and you listen to what they're saying in that department and their concerns that they're having, and make sure that they travel around and do that. That was one of the most valuable things we did with our company and pulled us all closer together in doing those roundtables with leadership and connected leadership to the individuals.
Yeah, that's great. I also think there's two parts to it. I think when you think about communication, there's structured communication methods, which would be like, your monthly all hands meeting, your monthly, maybe you do a virtual where your two leaders talk. There might be your team meeting. Like, there is importance to having some structure around that, so your team knows when to expect communication will be coming. When you have those structured meetings, make sure to protect it, because every department's going to want something else announced. So it's like, you have a structure for your meeting. We tell stories, we give announcement, we cash vision, we talk about what the next series is going to be. Maybe there's one other department announcement that's pretty big, like benefits or something's changing. But then, if you opened it up to all five other departments, now the meeting's diluted and it loses
Yep.
its function. And so I think there's structured meetings that you need to make sure you have on an ongoing basis, so your team knows when to expect communication coming. And I think there's informal communication. So when we were at Under Armour, Susie McCabe, who is the SVP of Global Retail, going into holiday, she just wanted to have, I just want to talk to the team. I just want to say hi to them. So we just used an iPhone camera, recorded her, 60-second videos, put it in an email and sent it to the team so they'd be able to see her just talking to the team. We do that same thing with our senior pastor. So I literally find him during our 4 times a year LCBCU day, which is our staff meeting. I just record him in the middle of the day. He's wearing the same clothes he did, and he just records a message that we then send out on our channel, where he's either revisiting something that happened to the day, of course, thanking everybody for coming, telling about what he's excited, just casting vision. And it's a 60-second video at the end of the day. And so, not overdoing it, not thinking it has to be some crazy thing, just that almost informal cell phone video can go a long way for people feeling like they're communicated well to.
Exactly, yeah. And I think sometimes some of those little touches mean the most to individuals as well. Brent, we sometimes don't think about it, right? Like we think we have to have, okay, this huge all hands on meeting, but sometimes I think those messages coming from leaders going out to employees, I think that on its own can be impactful and just letting them know what's happening, even the little things, right? Thanking them for something or maybe a major milestone that we've achieved as a business. I think all
Hmm.
that can make a lot of good impact on the company culture, the communication, and I think that all kind of comes together as well.
Agreed.
Perfect. I know we have roughly 3 minutes. There's two areas, Brent and Vidon, we can kind of touch on. If anybody has to hop off right on time, we'll be recording the webinar. So I'll be able to kind of send this as a follow-up. But whoever wants to stay a few extra minutes, there is just one or two areas left that we're going to probably cover for some extra insight, and then we'll follow up with everybody that's not able to attend as well. So I think when it comes to inclusivity, that was kind of one thing that I really wanted to touch on as well on today's webinar. So Vidal, I'll kind of let you maybe lead this piece on this one if it's okay. So in your experience, maybe what are the most common or important elements organizations should focus on when they're thinking about building an inclusive workplace?
Yeah, so this is really important to me, this inclusion piece. And it's because people don't understand what inclusion really means, right? That's what I've noticed. And that is, you know, inclusion is that number one, someone feels welcomed, their differences are accepted, right? All that the diversity of their thought and how they grew up and the culture that they bring, all of that's accepted. And number two, that the person feels a sense of belonging. Those are the two aspects to inclusion. And so we say, oh, we have this inclusive environment. But when we turn around and we say, okay, well, we have this inclusive speech and we have this inclusive environment, so you have to say things this way. Well, that's not inclusion, that's assimilation. I need you to assimilate to what I'm telling you, talk and act and do the things that we say so that we can be inclusive. Well, that's not inclusive, right? Inclusion is truly bringing who you are to work and feeling safe. There's a book, Whitney Johnson. It's called Smart Growth, and in that Smart Growth, she talks about these shadow values that people have these values and then they hide them in the shadows because they don't feel safe in their inclusionary workplace to say, I can share this value and that I won't be rejected because of that value. Well, that's not inclusion if they're not feeling like they belong and if they're not welcomed for the different values that they have. So the key would be to not have shadow values, that everyone feels like they can bring their value system and their diversity and their change of thought all to the table, and that's all welcomed. That when Z comes in, we love Z. We're going to welcome Z and everything that Z comes with, right? And that's who we want to be. That's inclusion. And then we work around that. And the way that we unify is through our company values, those like values. We respect everyone's values. But then, what does our company believe in their values and missions? And then as we focus on those, we become unified because we're accepting everyone and we're focusing on those like values.
I absolutely love when things that we know intuitively get backed up by stats. McKinsey Company surveyed people. They said that they surveyed people who recently quit their job. 51% said they left because they didn't feel a sense of belonging at work. And then Better Up Research said employees with a strong sense of belonging in their workplace are 167% more likely to recommend working at their company to other people, which, you know, we all know that a sense of belonging is important. The stats back it up too, you know?
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, like I'm sure probably the audience may be thinking about this too, Brent and Vidon, but how do we even create that sense of belonging, right? So it's like recognizing their accomplishments, what they're doing to help the organization, right? Making sure that they're communicated, they're well informed, they feel that they're part of the mission vision, right, that we're building as a business. So I think those kind of also play a critical role too, I think when we're creating some of that as well.
Yep.
Yep, for sure. I know I shared this stat with you before, Z, but
Yes.
and I haven't done any research to know what it actually says. But at our church, we have 285 staff. 40 of them are married. 15% of our staff are spouses, and there's something about that. There's a sense of belonging. There's a sense of culture. There's a sense of appreciation. Nobody's going to tell their spouse to come work at a place that's just good. Like it's got to be great. for them to recommend it. And so I'd encourage anybody to look at their organization and say, hey, how many spouses work together? Because
Yeah.
if you see a number, if you see a trend there, my wife works on staff. So I'm telling you, when if there's a trend there, that might be something.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Agreed. So I think kind of the last area I just wanted to touch a little bit on, Brent and Vidon as well, is kind of just talking through a little bit about what do employees value most too, because in each organization it's going to be a little bit different, of course, right? And kind of making sure that we're focusing on some of that too. So my first question, Vidon, I'll kind of start with maybe you on kind of leading this, but what do you think today's workforce values most when they're deciding whether to join or stay with an organization, and what recommendations do you have?
Yeah. Well, I see that very differently depending upon their generational growth and like where they are in their generations, right? Because all of those are different. They have different needs. They come into the workforce with different understandings and things that are important to them. But I think now people are looking for meaning and purpose and growth in their roles. A lot of those Gen Zs are coming in with that. But as you're bringing in different levels, I think that diversity and the value that they bring in, all of these like compensation and benefits, that's a given, right?
Yep.
How are you going to increase their career? What is it that's bringing them in? And culture is huge, but also is there a way for them to grow? I mean, boomers, let's just give some tendencies here. Boomers are workaholics. They've been with a company for 30 years and they love that and they're looking for a home, right? They felt like that was the way to be. Millennials come in, they've experienced the downturn of 2008, and they're not going to be loyal to any one company. They saw their parents lose their jobs from companies they'd been at for a long time because of that downturn. And so they're looking at side hustles. They're wanting that freedom. I can do this from home, right? And so
Yeah.
that millennials a little bit different like that. And then you've got Gen Xers and they're like, okay, as long as I can do this with my whole family. So if you're going to take me into this, then I've got to have that time. And they're kind of setting, I want this and this and this and this. And they became very specific. The Gen Zs, they want meaning and purpose. They tend to focus on, they've taught us some really great things in the workforce. They've taught us to pay attention to your mental capacity, pay attention to your emotional stressors, pay attention to the well-being spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. And they've taught us that that's important in the way that we interact with work. And so I think every single generation brings a different value to the company, and it brings depth and perception and understanding that all of us can learn from one another. Boomers love helping and training the Gen Zers, right? I want to give you my knowledge before I go out of the workforce. And the Gen Zers are going, I want to learn everything. I just want to know. I want it to change the world. I came here to change the world, so I'm here to learn and grow, right? And like, eat that up. Do something with that. And that with all those value propositions, what's important to them, and provide those things and those needs. It's going to be really, really powerful when you start engaging all of your generational value propositions and what's valuable to each of those generations, each of those people on that needs level, and how they see the world. Really powerful.
Yeah, that's so good, Badon. And I think you're exactly right. That's why it's so important to if your organization has a mission statement, it shouldn't just be something on the wall. Like it needs to be part of your culture. It needs to be visioned so well. And I have never seen it until I came to LCBC. Our mission is introduce people to Jesus and together fully follow him. And we have it all the time. It's everything we do, you know? Under Armour was make athletes better. And there were seasons at Under Armour where it was like, I did feel that. I feel like everything we're doing is to make athletes better. And that was the mission. And you felt like you were changing something.
Yep.
But to your point, like if you don't feel like you have deep meaning into what the mission is that you go to work every day, then the value proposition drops quickly.
Yep. Very much so. And that's how you lose your people, right?
100%.
Right. I think I see Terry has a question. Terry, I see your hands raised. I don't know. I'm gonna click allow to talk. If you'd like to ask your question, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, if you want to put it in the chat, if that doesn't work, you're welcome to do that as well. So, Terry, I think you should be unmuted now.
I'm sorry, I clicked it wrong. I don't have a
Oh, okay,
question.
no problem. Perfect. I think, is there any other questions? I will just kind of leave the floor open for a minute.
Z, I was thinking,
Yes.
just to give a thought on how
Yeah.
to actually make this happen, with
Yes.
generational differences,
Yes.
because I've been in teams and there's every generation, right, in that
Yes.
team. And so how do you bring that out of them? And that's creating check-ins and doing
Yep.
a coaching environment so that everybody has that voice at those different levels.
Yep.
And so every time I start a team meeting, I start it with a check-in, and that check-in gives 3 questions. And those 3 questions are, what are you most excited about? What are
Yep.
you most concerned about? What are you most proud of? Now you're going to get different answers with different generations within there. But them sharing those 3 questions, by the time you're done with your meeting, you know how people are feeling about what's coming up. You know what the concerns are. And then as you're talking, you're just addressing them. Oh, that's it, and it turns into this great conversation.
Yeah.
And then what are you most proud of is, how do I look at myself and my accomplishments? And is this company or this team providing that particular proposition for me, right?
Yep.
And pretty soon you find that people then start turning what they're proud of to their teammates. I'm really proud of the fact that, Susan and I were able to accomplish this. And then all of a sudden you're talking about other people that are helping one another. And all of those needs and those visions and that mission is all coming together throughout all the generations
Yep.
to create all of it, the culture, the
Yes.
inclusivity, the mission, the vision, the values, all of that's happening right there in your meeting, right?
Yep.
Like Brent said, here we are in this same thing, and we're all accomplishing the same goal at the highest level and at the most individual level. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good for the
Definitely.
audience. I know I was just looking at a couple comments as well written. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's perfect. Brent, do you want to add anything to that? Happy to give you the floor. And then anything you and Vidon want to add to kind of wrap up the webinar too. I'll let you guys have the floor for a few minutes and then I can wrap up as well from my end.
You, we didn't plan that, but Vidon, it's like I ask very similar questions. We'll start a lot of times as what are you grateful for?
Yep.
And then, which is almost like, what are you proud about? But what are you grateful for? Because we always try and lead with gratefulness. Well, I'll say, what did you love doing last week? What did you hate doing last week? If they keep hating things that are in their core job, then maybe we need to reevaluate that. And then, what roadblocks do I need to remove from you? And but that's all after a little bit of relationship. How's life? How are the kids? How was the trip hunting? How was whatever? That the relationship piece for us is the most important part before we switch into like the tactical things.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing anyone can do is to shut up and listen.
That's so
I didn't
good.
mean to say the S word there, but really, like, the power in listening, just be quiet.
Yep.
Let the space sit there. Allow that person to think. Let them
Hmm.
decide whether it's safe or not to share that right now. And maybe they won't share it then. But if you keep providing that listening ear, eventually you're going to be able to get to that root cause that Brent was talking about. And so listen, ask open-ended questions, allow them to have a voice, guide them in a coaching environment, not in a, well, what you need to do and tell them what to do. Empower them, guide them to the answer as they critically think through the steps, and help them think through those steps with open-ended questions. I would like to challenge everybody here, like, take a minute and have conversations that are only question driven. Do not make any statements, and see if you can get them to the end result on where you want them to go by questions and guiding them there, coaching them, not telling them what to do. Every manager can tell you what to do. Teach them how to think. Teach your people how to think, and you do that by listening.
Hmm. So good.
Agreed. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much. I know we were a little over, but I definitely just want to make sure, honestly, you guys got everything that you wanted out of this webinar today. Thank you again for everybody that took the time to attend today. Just a quick note, we'll send a follow-up email from this webinar with the recording. If you guys have any questions or want to have any conversations with Vidon and Brent, I'm happy to provide their information if they, if you guys do wish to communicate with them or have any questions on things that they've implemented, maybe any recommendations that they have for you guys. So happy to get you guys introduced to them as well post this webinar. Just a quick giveaway as well. We'll send this on the email follow-up, but for everybody that did attend the webinar, Osmore is providing 6 months free of its employee experience platform, which will actually help with a lot of these components that we kind of talked about. Technology does solve some of the problem, but not all the problem. problems. I think kind of Brent mentioned that a little bit here and there, but happy to, provide that to everybody that attended. If you guys have any questions or anything additional that you guys want us to maybe help you with, please let us know. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you so much for taking a little bit over an hour of your day today, and we really appreciated having you guys join us.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so much,
Steve.
guys.
Thanks,
Perfect.
Brent. Thanks all.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Take care. Bye. Brenton, Vidon, I can send you guys a quick link. You guys want to catch up quickly after this? Are you okay on time?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
I actually
Okay.
bumped a meeting for
Perfect.
this, so I'm actually
Perfect.
12 minutes late for that
Okay.
one.
I will see you
So,
soon. You
but I
run.
will
We'll
catch up
talk soon.
soon.
Okay.
This
Thank
was
you
a
so
lot of
much, guys.
fun.
Take care. Bye.
Vidon, it was really, really fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it really was, Brent. Thank you so much. I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
Have a good day,
Yeah.
guys.
Talk to
Bye.
you guys soon.
Bye.